Well, welcome to Three Guys, One Music. I'm Jamie. I'm here with Mike and Grant. How's it
Hello.
going, guys?
Outstanding.
Outstanding in the
Awesome.
field.
How are you doing?
How's the summer going for you guys so far?
Oh, moving right along, man.
Too fast.
Too fast. That's true. Running out of
Okay.
summer too quickly.
All right.
I have a correction. I misspoke last week.
Okay.
Rick Springfield's podcast is not Working Class Hero. That's the John Lennon song.
I did
That's in
think
my-
about that.
Stuck in my head. It's Working Class DJ, which is a play on Working Class
Oh.
Dog, obviously.
Okay.
So sorry, Rick. If you ever see this, and anybody else
Correction
who is
noted.
looking for it, it's Working Class DJ.
I like it.
All right.
Okay.
And another note, I didn't get to shower before tonight's podcast, so the smell-o-vision won't be on if you're using that option in watching this.
That
So
doesn't help me.
apologies.
It doesn't help
Well,
me at all.
You get the smell-o-vision no matter what.
It's a good thing it's 98 degrees there, right?
Indeed. Absolutely.
All right. Well, this week we're going to be talking about rhythm sections, our favorite rhythm sections. And we'll see how this goes. But I think I've got some good choices. And I'm sure you guys, being drummers and multi-instrumentalists, I'll be shocked if you guys don't have some amazing picks.
And horseback riders.
Yes.
Idiot.
Yes. Yeah. Renaissance men.
Jamie, what you been listening to this week?
I have been listening to a couple of songs, and I thought about this yesterday. And I've been listening to basically two songs. One is Black Sabbath's Born Again, the title track from 1983. And I don't remember ever listening to that song. Even when I listened to that record through the years, it never made an impression on me. And for some reason, I heard it a week or so ago, and I thought, that's really good. It's Ian Gillan singing on that record. And the record always had kind of a strange production, kind of woofy and not very sparkly. But that song, I don't know the answer to that. I want to say Tony Iommi, but I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just
is that the Bev Bevan era?
Yes. But Bill Ward played drums on that record. But Bevan toured with him, and he was in the video.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that song I really like a lot, and I've also been listening to a outtake B-side from Journey called La Raza del Sol, which was recorded for the Escape sessions in 1981. But I've discovered that well over 40 years ago on a B-side to, I don't know if it was Don't Stop Believing or whatever single was, maybe Open Arms. I don't remember.
Yeah.
That is a song that I've always enjoyed. And it's very, you'll just have to hear it, but it's a very Latino type of, Cuban, flavor to it, but it's just really well done. Steve Perry sings awesome on it, and it's got an acoustic guitar solo from Neil Schon that I've always loved, but I just love everything about it. So I've been listening to that song. Those two songs are what I've been listening to primarily over the last several days. So that's it. How about you guys?
All right. Well, excuse me. When you're making a list of your favorites, you listen to them while you're making that list. So I can't really go over that yet, but mainly it was a Fleet Foxes week, just trying to stay mellow. And the opposite of that, Beethoven, which is a German duo, and I've heard them called progressive and sludge rock. It's kind of stoner rock, but there's just two guys, bass and a drum, and drummer and one drum, just a bass and a drum. No, a bass guitarist and a drummer. And it's pretty interesting. It's a little out there, but I always appreciate those bands.
You listen to something really out there?
Yeah, for me, it was a change of pace. But I appreciate those bands where there's just two players and there's so many different types of music that come out of those bands like L1011 or Death from Above, 1979, or B. Hoover.
Physical
But it was
World
a
from
lot of
Death
fun.
from
I've got
Above, I
fun.
really like.
What's that?
Physical World from Death from Above, I really like.
Yeah, yeah. My wife's a
Yeah.
big fan of them. We listened
Yeah.
to them yesterday on a drive. But yeah, B. Hoover is an interesting band. I just recently discovered it and worth checking out if you're into that kind of music.
Cool.
All right. I love the fact that you're always listening to newer stuff, and I'm so stuck into my part of my brain. I just can't get out of it.
No, I listen to a lot of the same stuff over and over, but if something comes up that stands out, I make a list of it so I can talk
Yeah.
about it on Sunday
Okay.
today.
Yes, I also have listened to my favorites, which I cannot mention yet. I see where you're coming from, but I did also listen to a little bit of Porcupine Tree,
Oh yeah,
a little bit of Tool, a little bit of Dream Theater.
it's a progressive music week.
It was. Sometimes you just need to hear a lot of changes and a lot of different sounding stuff.
Let me ask you guys one question.
question.
Let me ask you one question before you move on.
Yes.
As drummers, and we're going to be talking about rhythm sections, I know what I typically listen to when I'm in the mood for maybe a choice, and it's always guitar driven for me. When you guys listen to, you say you Danny Carey or Mike Portnoy, I'm assuming the Portnoy era you're listening to. I don't know if it was Mike Mangini or not, the Dream Theater, but
Portnoy.
are you in a drummer headspace when you decide you want to put that on? Is that kind of where you're coming
No, I'm
from,
in a
or is
song-
it
I'm
just
gonna-
the whole package?
I'm in a song headspace. Like,
Okay.
I want to hear this
Yeah.
song or that song or a certain genre of song, and one leads to another. I don't remember which I started with.
Right.
I want to say it was Porcupine Tree, but obviously some of their heavier stuff, not while you wouldn't say it's Tool influenced, it has a heaviness like Tool.
Right.
So that might have led to that. And then listening to Danny Carey's drums, I thought, oh, I want to hear some Mike Portnoy drumming. And
Right.
so even though I have some of his other stuff that he's done as a sideman or other projects he's recording in the studio, I've got a lot of different Portnoy stuff because he's a very creative drummer. But no, I just went
Prolific.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
Man.
for me it's kind of reminiscing when I go back and listen, bands like that I've listened to so many times. I've had time to analyze what I want to hear and break everything down. So it depends on the mood, really. Sometimes I go back, it's like, Danny Carey's an amazing drummer. Let me go back and listen to this one song I remember is really good.
Right.
Yeah, there's that part that stands out. But mainly it's listening, to reminisce, or I'm listening for the dynamics of the song. You always get caught, as a musician, we always get caught up in analyzing parts, even in that we've heard a million times.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Sometimes it's just going back and saying, yeah, I was right about that. That's that part.
Or,
That's
wow,
that's
I didn't.
right.
I
that's
heard
what
that
it sounds
wrong
like to
for
me. Or yeah,
10
that's
years.
happened
I've
too.
listened to that wrong.
That's happened too. You go back and years later and you hear a song, and it's like, oh, I don't remember that. That stands out now.
How did I not hear that the first time?
There are different ways to listen to it. It just depends on the mood.
I think when I'm listening to things, I was listening to a playlist the other night and completely driving my coworker crazy. I'm sure. I was listening to a playlist from 1967 and Cherish My Love, or no, Never My Love by
Never My Love.
Yeah.
the Association. That was one of the songs that played, and several, To Serve with Love by Lulu. And I was just really paying attention to the songcraft, the modulations for keys, but also the parts. And I was thinking, God, that's just really good songwriting. I've been paying attention to a lot of that lately, but I'm getting ready to start recording and I'm acquiring some gear, and just spent a lot of money this weekend on gear, which is painful. And I'm thinking about guitar sounds a lot, but a lot of the stuff I'm listening to it's got to be different than you guys. But I'm just curious, because sometimes I want to hear a song that's got a certain amp, era of amp,
Yeah.
because I've got so many amplifiers, and I just love them. And I know what a certain sound I'm looking for. And then, that leads me down a path, like you said, Grant. You could listen to one song and then go, oh, this reminds me of this. I want to listen to this and all that. So it's always interesting. But I know where I'm at headwise, and was curious about you guys. But I'm envious that you can just say, oh, I want to just hear the song. I don't even know if it's that simple for me.
Yeah, it's just like I haven't listened to that stuff that I mentioned in quite a while.
Right.
That's why you said, you listen to the same stuff sometimes. And I said, I haven't listened to that in maybe a month or more, probably longer.
Well, that's very healthy. Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I want to hear that,
Well, good. All right. You guys want to go ahead and get into the topic?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. I am going to see if I can open my phone. I'm going to go with, I'm going to start.
Did we say what the topic was?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Rhythm sections.
We
Yeah.
don't remember.
I think
our
favorite rhythm sections. And what I'd like to do is I've got more than enough. I hope you guys do. I think we could probably just say 5 each is a safe place to go to. I'm going to try to really think outside the box here as much as I can. But my first choice is going to be Billy Cobham and Rick Laird from Mahavishnu. I always enjoyed their interplay, and I never really heard a lot of Rick Laird like accolades.
Otherwise, yeah.
But I used to read his column occasionally in Guitar World magazine, I think, back in the day. And very educated musician, knowledgeable, and I always loved Billy Cobham's drumming, and especially his solo record. But I really like the way those guys played together. And like I said, I have examples of people or people that are in that same vein, but I thought they had something special, and, Intermountain Flame and Birds of Fire, those two are, of course, the crowning achievements of those bands, I think.
Too bad we didn't get a couple more albums out of that lineup.
Yeah. But I always enjoyed their interplay. And like I said, this is just one of my favorite. To say this is the best, that's impossible to say. But I think they were a really a good team with each other. And that's going to be my first choice.
Yeah. That's a good choice. I can say listening to Billy Cobham at the time I was only listening to the drums.
Yeah.
So I can't.
As a young drummer, I thought you hear that and you're like, holy wow.
Yeah, that's what you zero in on. So, but I'll go next.
Okay.
Why don't you go next, Mike?
I'll go next. Thank you. I'm not going to stray too far from my own taste. It's art. When you say your favorite, then I'm going to zero in on that.
Yeah.
But rhythm sections are difficult because it's so visceral, right? It's very personal.
I thought this would be easier than it was. And I was like, wow, I a lot of rhythm sections.
Yeah. It was easy to make a list. It was easy to make a long list, but it is very personal because what stands out in a rhythm section, it's got to be something that stands out to you. It's to me, it's got to be tight and appropriate for the song, but if they stray and something really stands out, that makes a big difference. I'm going to go with Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare.
God, I almost put that on my list.
Me too.
Almost.
I really almost. I'm not
even
even kidding. I almost put that on my list.
But extraordinary. They were so important to reggae through the 70s. I started listening to them. I started listening to Black Uhuru and found out they were in that band at the time. And very impressive rhythm section, very solid, but also very not necessarily creating a new genre, but expanding the vocabulary of reggae with different rhythm types and different types of grooves. Very innovative, I think, for that type of music, and even beyond for R&B and pop and rock music.
Very, very respected.
Sly and Robbie played with so many great players. They played with Bob Dylan, Grace Jones, Mick Jagger, even
They
No,
played,
No
everybody.
Doubt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
And prolific also. They have a lot of albums. And I got my note here. I talked about earlier at one time Bill Lawson, when I talked about listening to Praxis, and Bill Lawson
Bill
actually
Laswell. Bill Laswell. Is it Bill Lawson from
Is
Praxis
it
or Bill
Lawson? Did I
Laswell?
say that right? I wrote down Lawson. I'm sorry.
I
I'm
thought it
still
was Bill
nervous doing these
Laswell.
things. Laswell, yes. Bill
Okay.
Laswell produced a couple of their albums.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hmm.
yeah. Interesting, because Sly and Robbie are such prolific and well-known producers too for different albums.
Yeah.
But as a just as a rhythm section, they're outstanding.
I agree.
And playing with Peter Tosh, or like I said, Blackie Hoover, they were really excellent.
I agree. Very good pick. I just about put them on my list. I'm not kidding. I thought about it and I thought, yeah, there's people
I thought for
like
sure
way
somebody else
more.
was going to get to that
Yeah,
before
I
me.
thought of that.
So,
So, no, I'm going to go further.
but yeah, one of my favorites.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, I've got I'm going to go with the obvious choice first. Not super obvious to some people, I guess, but I'm going to go with Chad Smith and Flea
On my list.
of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Obviously, I mean, you don't need to say very much if you know who those guys are. I listened to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and there's what I think is to me, the best part of that album is sort of in the middle, and there's 4 songs all together that just flow perfectly, and they are locked in so well.
And the songs are.
And the songs are, I wrote them down, tiny here. Mellow Ship Slinky in B major. That's where this starts. And then you go to, sorry, not enough light in here. The Righteous and the Wicked. And you got Give It Away. And then you got the actual song, title song, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. And they are just so locked in. And there's 2 kinds of rhythm sections. Super locked in, and it still grooves, and it's still perfect sounding. And then you've got not as locked in, but it grooves just as much, and you don't even notice that it's not locked down, because they're putting so much grease on it, as they say, that it just flows perfectly. But in this case, Chili Peppers, they are locked down.
Those guys have a special chemistry.
Definitely.
Whether you like the Chili Peppers music or not, those guys love playing with each other, and they know they have something special, and that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's my first choice. Like I said, a little obvious, but it is what it is.
Excellent.
It's on my list. Like I said, I was probably not going to select it. Like I said, I have quite a few, but on my list. Okay. I'm going to go with 2 guys that the band's named after. And
This better not be my pick.
I really, really love it. They are not extraordinary musicians that they could just play anything, but they lock in so well. And I think it's just amazing. It's clear they have also a special communication, or they did, but that's Mick Fleetwood and John McVie.
Yep.
And I just feel like all those classic recordings, they're just together and so musical. I just feel like John McVie is really very underrated. He was just a really musical bass player.
Not to cut you off, but that might have been the first bass line I learned, was in the breakdown in the chain. Doom, doo, doo, doom, doo, 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 doom, doom. That might have been the first bass line. A real bass line that I learned, not just the thumping, the root notes. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I know that I've heard that Lindsey Buckingham was really tough on John McVie back during that period, and really wanted him to do something different. And then years later, maybe decades later, realized the brilliance of John McVie. It's like this
Yeah.
guy he played the perfect part for the song, and he didn't need my advice. Or, I mean, I'm, paraphrasing, but his parts are just so perfect, and
Mhm.
they don't always stand out, but when you isolate them, it's like, "God, that's perfect." And that's listening to the song and playing for the song.
Yeah.
And there's a brilliance to that, you know, not
And Mick
trying to be the
Fleetwood,
hero.
yeah, Mick Fleetwood actually takes more of a chance with his parts,
Yeah,
and I think relies on McVie to hold it down, you know,
that's a
when
good
he
observation, yeah.
yeah,
And it's
Great
interesting you
thought.
say that. When I put my list together, I thought, I noticed that most of these are due to the brilliance of the drummer. For me, not
mhm,
I shouldn't even say the brilliance of the drummer, but the drummer is the one that's really locking it down, and the bass
mhm,
players complementing it. And then you
right,
have a couple that they're really together, like Chad Smith and Flea. And I have another couple that I think really were in that same description. And then you have somewhere where the bass player is really the key component, and the
yeah,
drummer is not the key component, but complements him. And that's just my opinion, but we can talk about it when that comes
yeah,
up. But yeah, it's interesting when I started to really think about these players, and even though I wouldn't necessarily listen to Mahavishnu, for example, all the time, I
yeah,
always was in uh, really recognition of what was going on,
Mhm.
or how it made me feel.
yeah,
So I never always took note of that. So,
yeah. If I
but yeah,
remember correctly,
Mick,
Peter Green, convinced them to join his band by telling him, the band's name is Fleetwood Mac.
I've never heard that, but that
I've heard that story, but
sounds like a
he
good
was, you
story.
know,
Plausible.
he was so impressed by their work together that he said, "I'm gonna name the band after you if you guys join."
What,
So,
and that's a phenomenal guitar player. Ugh.
yeah,
Peter Green, I'm just going to say, I think he's the greatest British blues guitar player there ever was.
Oh
Better than
wow.
Clapton and better than all of them. I think he was the
yeah,
man. He had the sound, and he wasn't, I mean, the songs he wrote were classic, in the brief period of time he was around. But, yeah, he's at the top of the list for British blues guitars players for me.
yeah.
He's the best. Okay. So Mick Fleetwood and, John McVie are my second choice.
Great
Okay.
choice.
Well, my second choice I feel is pretty obvious, but, whether they were part of Booker T and the MGs or the Stax Records house band, you cannot deny that Al Jackson Jr., Duck
Yeah.
Dunn, and Steve Cropper
Right.
were the most solid rhythm section
Yes.
ever. I mean, I love it. And you've got to, I feel like you've got to include Steve Cropper because he was part of that rhythm section. He made it chug
I
along
have a
just
rhythm
the
guitar
way.
included in one of my choices, and I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. Without the rhythm guitar player in this one choice, doesn't make sense.
And I love Otis Redding and I love the band behind him. You know, it's Otis Redding's voice is amazing, passionate,
Right.
dynamic, but the music stands out too. And that's because of those three players. They were always there, always
Yes.
on time, always in the pocket, always grooving. I love
Absolutely.
it. It is my favorite.
Nice. That is a great choice.
It is.
All right, Grant.
All right, I'm gonna do a controversial choice here
Oh my.
because this choice unfortunately leaves out the bass player.
Do we need to put the children away?
No, they can hear
Okay, they can stay in the room.
this. Two brothers, Alex Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen. And I think no shade to Michael Anthony. He's a brilliant bass player. He can play all the bass notes he wants. I did read somewhere before that most of the in-studio bass playing was done by Eddie. And Michael said because Eddie knew what he wanted and it was just easier to just let Eddie have some of the tracks and not worry about it.
I don't think that's exactly true, but I'll elaborate.
Okay. Well, I've
Yeah.
seen I've
Yeah.
read the interview where Michael Anthony said,
Eddie wrote many of the parts, but he
Yeah.
didn't play most of the parts. He did play Hot for Teacher, and he was going to do an extended bass solo in that but Mike couldn't play it, and they nixed it.
"Oh, okay."
He did write many of the bass
yeah, he
parts.
definitely-
but
he
did
definitely wrote
not. He did
because-
not record most of them. That is not true.
Yeah.
But he did write
Hmm.
many of them. That is
Well,
true.
Yeah, I did see that. I don't know. Sammy and Michael were in an interview somewhere, and they were talking about that when Eddie wanted to just record, they just let him record, because Eddie knew what he
Yeah.
wanted. So I don't know it probably wasn't a majority, but I'm sure it's more than a handful. But
Yeah.
either way, Jamie, you and I've talked about Eddie's rhythm playing before, and it
Phenomenal.
just, again, even though Alex is a more looser drummer,
Mhm.
it's not locked down like, say, Chad Smith.
Right.
Right.
But it's still got that groove. We talked about his shuffle groove. We've talked about that before. But it works so well because there are some Van Halen tracks that start out with the guitar and then the drums come in and you still are unsure of where the one is until the main song starts, and there are several.
Give me an example.
I am. I'll give you some examples. And I just pulled from one album here because it was easy to pull from one album. OU812 from the Sammy era. The opening track, Mine All Mine, starts off with a very weird sounding keyboard
Synthesizer. Yeah.
bassy sound. And then when the drums come in, you're still going, it's a loping feel,
Mhm.
but you're like, okay, there's the wait, he just hit 2 snare. Okay, wait a minute, where's the one? And then until the actual chords come in, you're like, oh, there it is. So it's very hard to count. I don't even know if it has a count or it's just the two
Mhm.
brothers playing because they have that feel together.
Right.
That,
Communication.
Exactly. And I just stayed with that album for examples. AFU, Naturally Wired, that's got some amazing stuff in it. And then going on down, Feels So Good, because it feels so good. It's a very simple song, but that thing just grooves so hard.
Mhm.
I
And
agree.
it's exactly what it does. I wonder if they got the title because that's how that music felt. They're like, this feels so good. Wait a minute. We'll
Right.
use it as a title.
Yeah. Sammy may have done that. Yeah. This feels good, guys.
I mean, Sammy, we love you, Sammy, but some of your questionable lyrics aside, that was a good choice to call it Feels So Good. And then Finish What You Started from that same album has such of it's the almost country picking guitar, and Alex is playing the beat kind of on the rim of the drum and the cross stick before the actual beat comes in. And when that beat comes in, it is more like Chad and Flea. It's locked down, but it's got that just pushing groove. It just carries that song all the way through. But and you can go back, you can go to any Van Halen album, and those brothers are to me they're, even though there's a bass guitar in there, they're the rhythm section to me.
I thought about that. I did think about Michael Anthony and Alex Van Halen, but I had the same issue that you're discussing. I love Michael Anthony. I think he feels really good when he's playing.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I really would have to credit the rhythm section to Eddie and Alex. I think you're correct.
Yeah,
it's a very good observation, and I never thought about that. Putting them together, but that makes perfect sense to me, and there's no argument for me. I think they really are the responsible. Eddie had an impeccable sense of time.
Oh yeah.
And that makes perfect sense.
He gets all credit for all the flash, but like I said, you just listen to his rhythm playing, and it's he can either be locked down or he can be loose, and it still sounds good either way.
Well, the guitar players that really know really recognize what great rhythm guitar player he was. He was the best rock guitar player, I would say. When you take into account the rhythm and the innovation that he did as a lead player, and he wrote all of those riffs, and I've said this to quite a few people, his vocals in the harmony background, I don't think gives enough appreciation. He's that middle part underneath Michael Anthony, and
Yeah.
he's got such an amazing ear. He has a limited voice. I kind of think of myself in that way. I don't have the voice that I could carry anything, but I know what my ear, where to put my voice. Eddie did that same thing very wisely. And when you listen to certain songs in the older catalog, when Michael was in the band, they did more harmony vocals back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His voice is right there, and it's just perfect the way they sat it in the mix. But I would miss it if it wasn't there. But nobody ever talks about his background vocals.
You're right. You're correct.
You know, good choice. I like it a lot. Like it a
Cool.
lot. I'm gonna go with I'm up, right?
You're up.
Yeah, you're up.
Okay. I'm gonna go with God, it is so hard to I want to get to all these, but I can't. I'm gonna go with Bill Bruford and Chris Squire.
Oh, okay.
I
I
knew
thought
somebody
about
would choose
that.
that.
I thought about that before I sent you guys I shared the YouTube clip. That was before then. I wrote that down almost immediately last week because I love Chris Squire is equally important in that to me equation. I just love he's probably got my favorite bass sound of anybody in rock history. I just love it.
Yeah.
It is just so warm and inviting, and it's just so musical, and those parts were great. Perfect amount of grind. And but I think he was just clearly so musical. But I love what Bill Bruford and him, I think they had a special language. And I love what he did with Alan White, what Chris Squire did with Alan White later, but I think Bill Bruford and he really had something special.
Mhm.
And definitely one of my favorite rhythm sections.
Mm.
And
Yeah, Yeah, he was they had a special, like I said, no shade to Alan White, but Alan was more of a traditional drummer, I
Right,
guess. I
right.
mean, he wasn't really trying to, and if this sounds terrible, sorry, he wasn't really trying to innovate or come up with a lot of different things. Whereas Bill, that's his main
Yeah.
deal, was like,
Bill
I
was
want to do
right.
some.
always pushing the envelope, whether
He would play it 3 times and go,
Yeah.
I'm bored, I'm going to change it up.
whether it was Yes
Yeah.
or King Crimson or UK.
Right. I mean, he left Bill Bruford left Yes at their peak.
Yeah.
Close to the Edge is the peak of the band. I musically, in my opinion, at least from that era. It decided that he didn't want to carry on. He felt like he'd already done it. Went to King Crimson. That's just crazy when you think about
Red is
leaving
an
a
amazing
band.
album with him and John Wetton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Red is a great listen.
it's 1974. It's one of my favorite King Crimson records for sure. He was the drums on Larks though, right? He joined the band in Larks, so that he's the drummer on that record.
Oh man, I don't know.
Oh.
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah,
Why
I
don't
He
can't
you
joined.
remember.
He left Yes in '72 because Alan
Yeah.
White toured, and he has to be on the
Larks.
Larks. Has that got Easy Money on it?
Again, have to go check the record.
Okay. While you guys are discussing that,
If any
I'm gonna
listeners know, look, put it in the comments.
I am
But,
Googling it now.
Yes, where am I going? Chris Squire and Bill Bruford, certainly a standout pair. I
Yeah,
don't know if I would name them on my list, but
right.
I love both players. But together,
I thought
I don't
about
know.
it, but I said I'll leave it because I didn't want to. I'm trying to go a different way, but I totally agree. I mean, that's when you heard the first. What was the first
Bill
thing we
Bruford
heard?
did play drums on Larks.
Okay.
Probably Roundabout was the first thing most people heard from Yes
Mhm.
because it was on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from the minute you heard that, you knew the drums and bass sounded not like everything else.
Yeah, there was something special about that.
Yeah.
Just that part of the song.
Mm-hmm.
The song overall, as a whole, is just an amazing,
Well,
just bombastic piece of music.
that I'm a guitar player, I have a different point of view than I am. which is I think that's great. I'm going to look at it slightly different than you guys. Yeah. I mean, we're both going to
Yeah.
look at it. All three are going to look at it from a musician standpoint, but I'm not going to think of it the same way you guys do. There's
Yeah,
going
of
to be
course.
a certain amount of appreciation that you're going to have, or lack of appreciation that I won't have, which I think
Mhm.
is awesome because, you know, I wouldn't want to have exactly, I wouldn't want to look at it through the same prism that you guys do. I want to look at it through
Yeah.
my prism, but, and I'm not saying you guys are saying that's not worthy. Of course, they're both
Oh,
amazing
of course not.
musicians,
No.
but that rhythm section always pleased me. It always pleased me.
Yeah.
And again, it's just my, you know, one of my favorites. But
Yeah.
I have a couple more, you know, when we get to it that are, you know, different.
Mhm.
So, but that's my third choice.
Nice.
Yeah. That's compelling, I'll say.
All right, Mike.
It's my
Oh, your
turn.
turn. That's right. I'm last.
I'm not giving up my
I'm
turn.
last.
Stuck in the 80s, man. It's my next choice has got to be Budgie and Steve Servin.
Mm.
Susie and the Banshees. I loved them from the start. Not that I was there from the start, but listening to Susie and the Banshees, discovering it and going back through the catalog. Every song, every album they're on from, you know, 76 to 96. They're 20 years, both of them. Budgie is a very innovative drummer, I think, very creative.
Yeah.
And Steve Servin certainly knew what to play and how to play it. Both of them very intelligent about their musical choices. And again, 80s goth music. Servin had that chorus bass, kind of like Peter Hook. You know, that's the sound of the 80s, and it stood out.
Mhm.
But both of them involved in the songwriting too. Very tight, complementing each other on each album as the music progressed and evolved from punk rock into goth rock or whatever you might call it then. Just a great combo and highly recommended if you're not familiar with Susie and the Banshees. Check it out. Tinderbox is an amazing album. Good place
1986.
good place to
That's
start.
my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The I can't remember the name of her covers album where all the songs are covers of other songs, and each song is done very differently stylistically from the original recording, and that's a good listen too.
Okay.
So, but love Susie and the Banshees, and those guys, Budgie and Servin, are certainly standouts.
Is it same band on the cover album? I mean,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Same band.
Sometimes, you know, they do something
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
I just was clarifying because I didn't know. I couldn't remember.
Okay. Grant, you're up.
I'm going to go with the band Michael mentioned previously, and I thought, oh no, he's taking my choice.
I'm gonna mark that off my list now.
L1011.
Oh yeah.
Christian Dunn and Tim Fogarty. Not the Tim Fogarty we know locally, but another lefty.
Mm-hmm.
Any track, any song, it's two guys, like Michael was saying, bass with multiple pedals and multiple loops, and seeing them live was amazing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know how Christian keeps up with what is where, when.
And sometimes he doesn't. Remember, he
Yeah, they had to
stopped in one
restart,
song.
yeah.
He said, we have to restart this because my time is off from the loops I created.
Yeah.
So they had to start over
But to be
again.
able to play that, I mean, in the studio, it's not easy, but it's compared to playing something like that live.
Mhm.
The studio is easy, but doing it live, like I said, if you mess that up, you mess one of those loops up and you're 3 or 4 loops deep.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go. But they're such a great instrumental band.
Yeah.
And they're the feel of their songs take you different places in your head, thinking or emotionally. It can make you feel different things. They have quiet songs, they have loud songs, they have long songs, short songs, all they just do it whatever. But they are locked in. Of course they're locked in because of the loops, but that's more Christian side. But Tim, he locks in, but he can be a little loosey goosey if he wants to be, or he can just stitch it up right close. And I think that really, his playing is not, it's not super simple, but it's not overly complicated. But like I said, he can, if they want a tighter feel, even in certain sections of certain songs, it could be the same song.
Mhm.
Start out with a tight feel, the middle section could have a more loose feel, and then the end section can tighten back up. And that's really cool because, like I said, the bass parts they're literally locked into
Mhm.
a digital time,
Yeah.
by the effects. So, and the loops. So all the pull and push is up to Tim.
Yeah. Well, you can say, well, they're locked into that loop and that time is already set for them like a click, but some of those songs change direction, even using a looper
Oh yeah.
to layer the sounds. They change direction in the middle of the song, and Tim drives right through, keeping that groove. And props to him for doing that, because it would be easy to get lost
Oh
in
gosh,
all
yeah.
that, where the bass is doing that layering and changing direction and stuff, and Tim has to keep plugging along. So if you get a chance to see them live, you would think on the record, oh, that's all looping, it's not that exciting. But live, they
Watching
put
them
on a
do
good
it.
show,
Yeah.
and the vibe is there, the groove is there, they're very strong. Good choice.
Nice.
L1011, excellent band.
I like it. Yeah, I've only heard a couple things from them. I'm not really super familiar with them, but I'm going to look into them more.
They have the
Um,
greatest song titles too.
Oh yeah.
Like
Definitely.
one song is called is it I listen to Van Halen because my sister says they're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the name of one of their songs.
And Christian goes on YouTube. He's on his YouTube channel, and he will play on the bass. He will play through entire albums,
Yeah.
like play along with the album, like as his practice.
Yeah, it's fun to watch his videos.
Yeah, he's
when he
got
does
one that stands in my mind is Duran Duran's Rio.
that. Exactly. I
And
was thinking that too.
he
That's
plays
the
through
one.
the whole album, and you get to see, because a lot of musicians, side note here, thought Duran Duran were kind of a boy band back in the day, even though they played instruments,
Mhm.
and they weren't serious musicians. But you
great
watch,
musicians.
yes, and you watch, like, just speaking of John Taylor, you watch that video of Christian playing through the whole album, and it's not easy to do. I mean, some of those bass lines are very intricate, very difficult to play, and so props to John Taylor. But
It didn't take me long as a kid to realize he was better than just about anybody doing what they were doing.
yeah,
Mhm.
He had to be one of the top bass players that was I don't know what you would call it. I was going to say a boy band, but that, of course, not
yeah,
even close
Yeah.
to being true.
It was
But
pop. It was
a
it was
pop,
top 40 pop.
a pop band that had pretty boys in it,
yeah,
and were appealing to a younger female audience for sure.
Mhm.
He was definitely, I think he is the best musician in the band. He's the best player in the band. But I loved that period of time. Those songs, maybe at first you think you can't take them seriously. It doesn't take very long before no, this is really good stuff, and
yeah.
this is a
It's
real
good
deal.
music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to Save a Prayer recently. I just
Mhm.
heard it, hadn't heard it in a while. I thought that is so good. It's just such a good piece of music, in my opinion. Well, that's an awesome, awesome choice. I'm going to go with for my next choice. I am up, right?
You
Yeah.
are. Yes.
Um,
Confused. I was like, what am I doing?
I am going to go with Butch Trucks, J-Mo, and Barry Oakley. Those guys had a special language, in my opinion, for those first few records when Barry Oakley was around. I thought their interplay with each other was really, really creative and moved around a lot. I don't know if they locked in, but they took chances. And I think that they were in my opinion, that period of time, they were the best jam band ever.
Mhm.
It wasn't the Dead. And I could say great things about Phil Lesh and Mickey Hart and Bill Kreutzmann. They were great. But I really think the Allman Brothers were the best of that genre, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
They had something special for me. And I really loved the how they played together. And once Barry Oakley, passed away, it was different. But they kept driving the song, but Barry Oakley was really a key ingredient to that. He didn't stay around. He moved around the bass a lot.
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed how they work together. But one of my favorite rhythm sections.
Cool.
Very, very difficult to replicate because I've
Yeah.
played several covers in a cover band of
Yeah.
Allman Brothers music, and it's you want to have that feel, like
Right.
you said. It's not locked down per se, but it's that good feel, you know. And
Yeah.
and you want to let the bass breathe, but you want to let the drums breathe at the same time, because that's part of the secret. And just being a single drummer, you gotta
Right.
fill in the gaps and think, oh, I can't just play
Right.
one part. I've got to kind of mesh things together so it sounds fuller than it is.
Mhm.
Well, those
And
guys they had to listen to each other.
oh yeah.
You know, they would improvise a lot.
Mhm.
And that's what is remarkable to me. It's not just they're playing the same parts. You could say that, yeah, they may not have been the best musicians, by themselves, but together they knew how to
You
speak
know,
with each other.
it's supremely difficult for two drummers to play essentially the same beat and not sound like a train wreck.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of practice,
Mhm.
and you have to kind of almost give up control to make it sound good. Because if you try to match the other drummer
Right.
note for note, one of you is always going to be a little behind or ahead. And if you just kind of relax and just play the song, don't
Mhm.
play
Right.
the part, play the song.
Right.
And that's what those guys, again, like you were saying
Yep.
before, that's another example, playing the song,
Yeah.
not playing the part.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Butch Trucks took the lead. He was the lead drummer, if there is such a thing, and JMO kind of complimented
Yeah.
and filled in the holes, where appropriate. And I think they worked really well together. But I never hear anybody talk about JMO. But with Barry Oakley, I really think they had something special. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Those, you can't go wrong with those early
yeah.
songs.
Well, that's my fourth choice. So many that I want to talk about. We're not going to have
That
time.
was
to.
it for you?
We're number 4.
Oh my goodness, where are we? Okay. I'm going to share my list with you. You can read off of it. That way I'll get all mine in. Miles Davis was not only an amazing musician and composer, but he was so good at finding the right people to interpret his music. Right? So you know where I'm going.
I knew where you were going with
Tony
this.
Williams and Ron Carter.
Yes, almost on my
You
list.
didn't take my.
I was
pick.
waiting for someone to go there, but especially on the album ESP, those guys, man, and what a great album with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter.
What was that, 65?
Was it 65, 67? I'm not sure.
Maybe 67.
A stepping
looking
stone, or at least you could tell by that album where Miles was headed, and Bitches Brew came out later. But Tony Williams, Ron Carter, just amazing musicians. Really,
65.
really letting it go on that album, where they're still anchoring down the band. And to me, it sounds like Ron Carter says, "Hey, I'm going to go over there," and Tony Williams is like, "That's awesome. I'm going to go this way, and I'll meet you there." And they do, and they both go off, and they
Yes.
play their own thing, and it's still part of the language of the song
Yep.
on every song on that album.
Yes.
And it's if you're not into jazz and you've heard Miles Davis and you want to start somewhere, I highly recommend ESP. I think it's a brilliant album. Jamie, you've asked me before, what's my favorite Miles album? And every time I listen to an album of his, it's like, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
Oregon Best, I said I love, because their interpretation of Gershwin is just a beautiful thing. But listening to ESP, listen to the whole album twice this week, and it is a beautiful thing. And it's amazing the musicianship of all of them.
Yeah.
But Ron
Yeah.
Carter and Tony Williams are just stand out when you're listening to the rhythm section. They're just so I'm dumbstruck just thinking about it.
I agree.
It's great stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even Sketches of Spain,
Yeah.
I mean, Miles was just on a different planet. I mean, he
He was miles ahead of everyone
Man,
else.
Yeah,
he
No
was
pun intended, I guess.
he was special, you know, and like we talked about a few weeks ago, I mean, as a band leader, this guy selected some of the best musicians. I mean, they all became legends in their own right. They
and not
weren't
only
just
the best musicians, but the best melding musicians.
yeah,
Knew how to put a
yeah,
band together. It just wasn't the best. Wasn't just the best players. It was the best players who could play
Who could
together.
play together.
He
Yeah.
knew how he knew how those people fit together.
It's really remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that choice. Ron Carter and Tony were almost on my list, but there's just so many. But I love it. Love that
Yeah.
choice. All right, Grant.
Yeah, I thought you were going to steal mine because
Oh, you-
I'm going with Paul Chambers and Philly Joe Jones.
There you go.
From John Coltrane Blue Train.
Yeah. Excellent.
And that's sadly the only album those two played with Coltrane. Paul Chambers died at 33,
Mhm.
so we didn't get a lot. I mean, and he played with Miles. He's on like a 13 and Miles albums or something like that. But
He is
that
one of my
album-
favorite bass players.
yeah, that Blue Train is just from the get-go. There's
Yeah.
not even any standout song because they all stand out.
Yeah.
And there's a remastered version with an outtake of Blue Train, another take, and then what's the other? There's another song there. I should have written it down. But I didn't write any songs down because I was saying it's the whole album. But from the moment Blue Train starts, that just is that feeling. You just, even if you're not into jazz, go listen to Blue Train and put it on. And from the minute the bass and drums begin playing together, it's just brilliant.
It's one of those songs that people who might not even know they like jazz could listen to it and think that's great.
Yeah. And I mean, that whole album's that way. And it's not, for lack of a better term, it's not dumbed down jazz for like somebody who they're trying to get you to listen to jazz. So they're making it simple. You know, definitely. I mean, they're very melodic songs and they have their what people would say, okay, I lost the song. You know, well, no, just pick it back up. That that can happen. That can happen when you're listening to classical music. You know, any song that has a lot of different sections, a lot of different parts, maybe different tempo changes. It's easy to lose your place sometimes. You know, you can lose your place in a 12-minute Rush song if you're not paying attention. But those two, I wish we could have had more of Paul Chambers and Philly Joe Jones together. Because there's something magical.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that studio, you know, because jazz, they all play together. They're just doing different.
Was that recorded at Inglewood Cliffs?
I did not look. I looked at the date. It was 57.
57.
I did not look at the studio. Sorry. But
I think most of those recordings were made at Inglewood Cliffs.
Yeah.
Jersey.
But,
you know, Jones drumming is so beautiful on that album. As much as he plays what he chooses to leave out makes it just as impressive. He's so great on that album.
As many jazz records that I love, that record is special because it's not too much. It's like the perfect amount of every ingredient.
Yeah.
And it's like satisfying, but it's not like too much.
Yeah.
And like you said, you know, I never really thought of it in terms of what he left out, but I guess that's essentially what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jones
don't feel like it's too
at
much.
that. And that album's a good example of that.
Knowing when to not overplay.
Yeah,
a lot of jazz is about overplaying, and it's supposed to be because you're improvising, you're taking it somewhere it wasn't. But Blue Train is a perfect mix of melody and improvisation.
Yeah,
it's not just like you said when Miles, you know, when he was changing up Bitches Brew and stuff like that before Coltrane started, you know, getting more out there on things like that. You know, that would be hard for someone who never heard jazz to just put that on and go, oh, I don't know what this is.
Right.
You know,
I think I told you I tried to put on Giant Steps at work, and it wasn't for the audience I was playing it for. Still a beautiful album.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's wild to think about. I read this years ago that Blue Train. I mean, this was back in the late 50s. I guess jazz was more, you know, common. but there was a 45 of it that was on the jukebox player.
Yeah.
People would just go into a diner and play that song, and I thought, "That's crazy. That's awesome." But it's like, you
Yeah.
just can't imagine that that's the environment back then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
they
I thought
were
about that before.
yeah, that's cool. Like I said, I mean, we have to say Coltrane is a hometown hero, grew up in High Point, North Carolina, so
Yeah.
we're very proud of our hometown boy. I consider the greatest jazz, maybe the greatest saxophone player of all time. One of the most innovative and constantly on the search for the next thing.
Yep.
Definitely
And
innovative.
yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to go for my final pick here, and I'm going to probably go with an obvious one. Maybe. There's so many that I want to talk about. It's just not time, but I'm going to go with Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams, and Malcolm Young. And I guess we could say I almost did the Van Halen thing.
Angus.
Phil Rudd and Malcolm Young.
Yeah.
Malcolm is a crucial part of that rhythm section.
Oh,
To me,
absolutely.
without him, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Phil Rudd is a drummer that feels good when he plays. I don't think he overplays.
He definitely does not overplay.
Yeah, he doesn't even hit the cymbals, a lot of times when people think, oh, there should be a crash here or something. I really enjoy the way those songs feel. And I think that as a rock rhythm section, I think Phil Rudd has a lot of respect. And Malcolm obviously has a lot of respect. I don't hear that much about Cliff Williams, but he was there. I mean, he played right along with it, and it felt good to me. And I don't have any criticisms of it. It wasn't very inventive, but it fit the song, and it's very satisfying for me.
Yeah, if it's not out of place, you don't notice
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, playing that kind of anthemic music, there's a place for just 4 on the floor driving right ahead,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's certain things that he does, like in Back in Black, I think at one point during, A chord, he plays an F sharp, which fits the chord, but it just is a little different,
Yeah.
or maybe it's a C sharp. It might be a C sharp. Yeah, it's the third of a C sharp. I'm sorry. And without that, it doesn't sound the same. So he was putting some thought into it. And of course, Angus or Malcolm could have written that bass part. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it just feels perfect, but without it, you're just like, that's not quite right.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize a bass can change the whole feel
Oh, yeah.
of the chord you're hearing. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're playing, like if you're playing a major chord, and if the bass is playing the flat fifth or something,
Mhm.
it's going to totally change how that chord feels, And a lot of times people don't realize the vocal melody
Oh, yeah.
follows the bass. It doesn't
Mhm.
follow the guitar. It follows the bass.
Actually, Mike Mills talked about the Michael Stipe on Radio Free Europe. I believe it's Radio Free Europe. It might not be Radio Free Europe, but there's a song that he basically just follows the bass line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Well, if you listen
it
to
just
a lot of songs, the melody, sorry, I mean to cut you off, the melody just it's not singing the bass part,
Mhm.
but
Right.
it's more in tune, so to speak, with the bass part than it is with the way the guitar chords are structured.
Well, that goes to songwriting, I
Yeah.
mean, and understanding music well enough, or at least trusting your instincts, and you better have good instincts. But when you have parts that you're putting together, and that obviously make sense, but they also push the song. They're
Yeah.
not just obvious. I think that interview I've seen with Rick Beato and Sting, where it's like, you want to surprise people. They want to be surprised, but it might not have to be so jarring of a surprise. They're like, oh, what is this? But it's like, oh, that was cool. And just having a part in there that really is complimentary,
Yeah.
but
Right.
takes you in a little different direction there.
Your ear's thinking it's going up, but it goes
Right.
down.
Yeah.
Or your ear
Well,
thinks it's
yeah.
going down, but it goes up. And that happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, this is where the song's going, and then all of a sudden, oh, that's a nice surprise.
That's the drugs.
Yeah,
That's the drugs talking.
that's right.
But yeah, you don't necessarily need the pyrotechnics to make a great
Right.
song. You got to have a good feel, and sometimes all the time the right. No, I can't talk tonight. The right.
Drugs.
No, it's the drugs Grant gave me. All the time, the right note choice is important, and
Yes.
that's more important than the pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
It is the most important thing is the notes you're playing. I talk about feel,
Yeah.
it better feel good. If it doesn't feel good, I don't know how you can fix that.
If it doesn't feel good, then why are you playing it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to music to feel, well, maybe to feel bad, but I'm not listening to music to not feel good about the music and how it sounds.
Yeah. It's got to feel good overall.
Yeah. If you might listen to something sad because you're in a sad mood, that's what I meant. But I'm saying, you still want to hear a good song, even though it's complimentary to your mood,
Right.
even if it's a sad mood.
Well, AC/DC do that for me. I've listened to, like I said, there's 2 songs that I mentioned earlier that I've been primarily listening to, but I have been listening to quite a bit of AC/DC. And I don't know. There's so many things about it I love. It doesn't get old to me like it does to some people. And I'm listening to a lot of different elements, not just the song, but everything.
Yeah.
So that's my final choice.
Yeah. Good choice.
Excellent.
Good choice.
Excellent.
Oh man, I've got 3 I want to talk about, but I can only talk about one. Let's go with. We've talked about them before. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to say Tim Alexander and Les Claypool.
Oh, okay.
The albums Frizzle Fry and Sailing the Seas of Cheese are exemplary of their connection. Les's bass guitar is out front. He's playing that riff. That's the most important part of the song. But Tim is back there. Really, Les is kind of keeping time.
I was going to say
and
that.
Tim is expressing himself in just the perfect way. He's got little inflections that he puts in between the phrases, and somewhat conservative, actually, playing progressive type rock like that. But Tim and Les play together so well, and just those 2 albums are all you need to know that. Even just the listening to Tom and the Cat is outstanding performance by both of them.
Or
Jerry was a race car driver. Yeah. Any of that album, I really I know they've changed drummers a few times, but Tim Alexander I think has really worked really well with Les Claypool.
I agree
in that setting, and that really stands out for me. I really like their interplay.
Good choice. I've had some problems with I have issues with Les Claypool's style.
Yeah,
but he's
it's understandable. We've talked about
that. I just think that any musician, it's not just him, it's just like any musician, that his style is more based on rhythm than it is melody.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's just not my thing. I need melody and I need tone, and I just don't feel like that's really his thing. But he's obviously he's more than capable of doing that. He's played in a Rush tribute band, or they've not a Rush tribute band, but they played Rush records from
they toured Farewell to Kings, didn't they?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, he obviously can do it.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
That's how much I pay attention.
I
don't really know.
And I don't remember what tour that was.
Yeah, but
I agree with you. They have an excellent communication with each other. I totally agree with that.
And I get that they're not everyone's cup of tea, because there's not a lot of melody,
right? Yeah,
in their songs. Even
that's hard for me. Yeah. But if that element is missing, it's hard for me. It's really easy to lose me if I don't have that element.
Yeah, even the guitar wailing in the background, it's very
dissonant.
It's very rhythmic. It's not very melodic, but it's a fun romp if you're into that kind of thing, and always clever, biting lyrics and that kind of music. But yeah, that's my pick.
Nice.
Good pick.
All right, Grant. The final one.
The final one. A little band called, since we're having some rain and some storms, a little band called Weather Report. But the Peter Erskine, Jaco Pastorius lineup.
Incarnation. Yeah.
Yeah, and particularly I was listening to the live album 830,
Okay, yeah, good album.
and to be that cohesive, not just in the studio, because you obviously get multiple takes if you need them, but to sound that good live,
Mhm.
it just sounds good. It just feels good. They play off one another. Like you said, one guy goes, I'm going to go over here. And then it says, okay, I'm going to go over here, but I know where you're going. So
Yeah.
we're going to meet over here. Kind of the same thing. All the songs are good. I say Black Market stands out. Birdland stands out. And the more traditional jazz song, Sightseeing, really stands out because Weather Report wasn't a traditional jazz. I don't know how you would classify them. I don't know if they would be progressive jazz, modern. I don't know what you would classify
I
them
think
as.
they were called fusion at
Fusion,
the time.
yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like
That was kind of the
Yeah.
all-encompassing.
Yeah, they were fusion. I would say they're
sound
fusion.
for the time.
Yeah.
Black Market is actually my favorite record by them.
Yeah,
And that
but
had Alphonse Mouzon on it there, right?
yeah,
He
I
was
believe so.
that was 75. I think that was right before Jocko joined, and that's actually my favorite compositional from top to bottom. That's my favorite record.
Yeah.
That's the one I listen to more than any other.
Yeah.
There's a song on there called is that Havana?
Yes.
That song I love, and the title track Black Market I really like. But
Yeah.
that is a great record.
But
Really
yeah,
love the compositions on there.
The live one, that Sightseeing track is more of a traditional jazz song, and so you get to hear, like you said, I don't know if those fusion guys got criticism for not playing real jazz, but of course they could play it. They all came up on it, you know. And even in the context of that album, hearing Jocko and Peter play in a more traditional way, just as amazingly as they could play in their fusion way.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Some of the stuff they do, you know, you go back and rewind. What did they just do? What did he just do? You know, and if you're listening to all the instruments, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, what did Peter do? What did Joe just play? You know, it's just
but that live recording in Birdland is just, to me, it's just classic.
Yeah.
I love to listen to that. But Jocko is a great player. I mean, I'm singing to the choir, or preaching to the choir. I'll get it right.
We first sing.
You're going to allow that since we're talking about music. But Jocko is obviously amazing, or was amazing. But I feel like a lot of times, if you watch him live, I feel like a lot of times the drummers were kind of chasing him, not because he's so extraordinary and so inventive.
Oh yeah,
you weren't really sure where he's going. And it felt like that to me. But yeah, that's a good pairing, and that's a great live album.
I think Peter could hang with him.
Yeah.
I don't know how people feel about Peter Erskine, but to me, he is one of the finest jazz drummers.
I totally
on the
agree.
Planet.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think he has my total respect.
Yeah.
I think Erskine is one of the best.
Yeah.
I know Neil Peart loved him. He took lessons from Neil Peart.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he did with Freddie Gruber, but they at least got together.
Yeah, when Neil was trying to get more of a jazz feel, he definitely took lessons from Peter.
Yeah.
But I almost everything he plays, it's like Steve Smith. Almost everything he plays is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know? Other than having an off night or something, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say real quickly that I thought about this yesterday. I'm glad to say that I saw Steve Smith play. I've only seen him one time, but I saw him with Journey 6 years ago in Albany, New York. And, you know, I think that he wasn't really super comfortable in that role anymore, but it obviously paid well.
Yeah.
But he played very well. It just seems super rehearsed. He obviously did his homework, but he was looser back in the glory days, the early 80s, and he could still do everything. It was a little looser, but still awesome. It was almost too regimented for me, but it was still great to see him. And I always had total respect for Steve Smith. So I just want to say that as a sidebar.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So that's all of our picks. I really enjoyed this episode, and thank you.
Yeah,
Mike,
it was a lot of fun.
suggesting it.
I've got a lot of music to listen to this week.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for checking in. We hope you got a kick out of that like we did. We'll be back next week, and we'll have a special guest coming up in the next couple weeks.
A repeat guest.
As Mike always reminds me, please like and subscribe if you watch us on YouTube. We do have the audio version on iHeart, Spotify, and Podbean. As I've said many times, I promise Apple is coming soon. Just a lot going on, and I haven't had time to devote to it like I'd like to, but it will be coming. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
All right. Awesome. Peace. Be well.
I hear sounds in my head. I hear music in my brain. All right.
All right.